Story 1. I would go and find a chain link fence and cling to it for the fun of recreating Terminator 2. Story 2. Underground parking garage with multiple levels. Concrete is your best protection against radiation, and being below ground with layers above you is far better than any surface shelter. Story 3. Neighborhood watch Facebook groups. Is anyone hearing gunshots? I think the trees are melting. Whose dog is loose? Story 4. This is probably a bad idea, but there is a highway that goes into a tunnel leading under my city. At the deepest point, it is 215 feet below street level. I feel that might be a good spot, or it could just collapse and drop the whole city on my head. Story 5. My house was built in the early 1980s, and the original owners had a bomb shelter constructed below the garage. It is a reasonably sized room with concrete walls, a concrete slab overhead, and thick metal doors. I am not a prepper, but we keep a small generator, some fuel, fresh water, and 2 weeks' worth of food in there for hurricane season. The only thing it really lacks is furniture, since we only use it as a storage room. If I had 20 minutes of advance notice, I would probably spend that time hauling folding chairs, mattresses, a collection of books, all the batteries I could find, and some buckets for waste down to the shelter. Story 6. Most people assume nuclear blasts are far more powerful than they actually are, largely due to media portraying them as similar to comet impacts. This misconception is reinforced by famous test footage showing mock houses and trees hit by nuclear test explosions in the Nevada desert, which were actually only a few hundred yards from ground zero, not many miles as often assumed. For example, I am in the United Kingdom on the Wirral, a peninsula just across the Mersey River from Liverpool. A top priority target in any attack would be Capenhurst, where we make and process all the fuel for nuclear weapons. Although less so today, it is still used to some extent for that purpose and was always a high priority target during the Cold War, much like Foslane in Scotland, where our nuclear submarines are loaded with warheads, and Plymouth, where the nuclear submarines are based. Let's say the Russians, the only country really capable of striking US, used one of their higher-yield warheads for an attack of around 800 kilotons. Optimized as an airburst, I would be in very serious danger if I stayed at home. However, if I moved to West Kirby or Hoylake, which I could reach in about 20 minutes, I would be outside even the light damage radius, close to the boundary between first-degree burns, essentially sunburn, and no harm at all. Even better, I could stick to the M53 motorway and enter the Mersey Tunnel. Although risky if it collapsed, it would offer significant protection. If the explosion were a surface burst, the damage radius would be smaller. If the warhead were smaller, which most deployed nuclear weapons are, as they are not multi-megaton devices like those tested in the 1950s, the damage would be even less. Story 7. Nowhere. My city has at least 20 city-killer warheads aimed at it. There is no hiding or escaping. Everything will be ash and glass for 300 miles. Story 8. Basement. Family would be fine there for quite some time. A nuclear strike in my area would happen about 70 miles southeast of my house, so no real chance of fallout given wind direction. The packed soil would pretty much shield from the vast majority of the radiation, especially at that distance. Story 9. Depends. If I am close enough to be instantly vaporized, I would stay put. If it is just close enough to boil my skin and burn my lungs, I am irrigating my skull. Story 10. I live within the blast radius of a primary target. I will pour myself my favorite scotch and sit on my deck. Story 11. There is nowhere to hide. Unlike Switzerland and the Nordic countries, here in America we do not have nuclear shelters for public use. Remember how the people of Hawaii were running around like headless chickens? Story 12. If I had a 20-minute warning, I would just drive away. 20 minutes is 20 miles on an interstate. If I recall, no blast radius is that large. Radiation is not really a concern with modern warheads. Now, if everyone has a heads up, driving away becomes much more difficult because panic groups are unorganized groups. So I might as well find an underground place or a deep valley if I am lucky, or just sit and take it. Story 13. I live next to an Air Force base with intercontinental ballistic missiles and a nuclear submarine off the coast. I am not surviving a blast. I think I will just go hug my dog. Story 14. I was driving in my car against the flow of traffic, as fast as road conditions would allow. 20 minutes is enough time to drive outside of the blast radius, provided you are not stuck in traffic. Story 15. I wouldn't. The world left after that bomb went off, even if it were a single bomb, would not be worth living in. Not only is nearly everyone I know and love gone, but so is my home, my livelihood, and most likely what little remains of my liberty. Combined with how drastically it would change geopolitics, my life as I know it is effectively over. Took me so long to get where I am now. If I have to start over from literally nothing, I'll be retirement age by the time I am back to where I am, if that is even possible, and that also means retirement is impossible. I do not see any value in existence for its own sake. Life without quality is not worth living. Why suffer for a few more years only to die still suffering? I would spend my few remaining minutes hugging my wife and our pets, getting the most enjoyment I can out of what little time remains. Story 16. Climb a tree and enjoy the sunset as the wind carries my spirit, reaching a state of sublime ecstasy. Story 17. I would stand out in the open. Survival is not worth it. He says this knowing full well he would try to survive and kill everyone else. Story 18. I live close to a designated target city. It would take 20 minutes to leave our neighborhood, approximately 2 miles. With such short notice, my wife and I agree to skip the panic, grab some lawn chairs, open a bottle of our favorite drink, smile, and wait for the flash. Story 19. I would not run or hide. What I would do is go find my dog and enjoy the last few moments on Earth with him, because as soon as that bomb lands, it is over. I would hang out with my parents too, but since we live in the same house, finding them is easy. Story 20. Get in a car and drive. There are not many nuclear weapons with a blast radius that you cannot drive beyond in less than 20 minutes. The blast radius is in the 1 to 4 mile range, which is very large, but if you have 20 minutes of warning, you can easily drive outside of it. Now, a full-scale United States and Union of Soviet Socialist Republic-style nuclear war, it will depend on where you live. There will not be any escape from my location, so I will probably just crack a beer and watch. Story 21. Basement. Every apartment building and public space in Finland has a bomb shelter. It is safe to say that Finland has been preparing for the worst for the last 80 years. Having Russia as a neighbor naturally creates trust issues. Story 22. I'm Swiss. I'll just stay home and go to my mandatory built shelter, which conveniently turned into my pantry. Story 23. Learning from these comments, people have no idea about the size of the blast radius from a nuclear weapon. It is not as big as you think. Even with a 5 megaton blast like the ones China currently has armed, I could drive well outside the entire blast range in 20 minutes. Story 24. In grade school, we practiced getting under our desks with our hands protecting the back of our necks, so I have that going for me. Story 25. Inside my wife. We are not getting to safety in Houston traffic with everyone trying to leave at the same time. Might as well spend 18 minutes telling everyone we love them and the last 2 minutes being intimate, going out with a bang, literally. Story 26. If you are at the center of the impact, you cannot get away in time. Your best option is a deep underground cellar. It must have substantial cover on top by the time fallout arrives to block radiation. However, a firestorm will still likely cause severe harm. An open grave may help survive the initial blast, but unless you are buried, fallout radiation will be fatal. Story 27. I know there is a nuclear shelter in town, but I do not know exactly how to get there. I guess I would use a rideshare service to get there and hope I make it in time. Maybe bring some cans of beans. Story 28. My building's parking garage, I guess. It's not underground, but it's the most concrete structure nearby. Story 29. Yeah, I agree. I would just wait for it. My family is 15 minutes away. If they could not get out, I do not want to play the whole what would my job be in the apocalypse game. Just count me out of it. Story 30. Since I live within the projected blast radius of an airbase, if I knew, I would probably just go outside and wait. Unless I got extremely lucky, the effects of surviving would be the worst of either being vaporized or suffering from slow radiation poisoning. Story 31. Some of the buildings in my city go as deep as parking level 12. I would go down there and hang out in the mechanical room. Story 32. If my children were nearby, I would go to be with them. If not, I would head for ground zero to be as likely to be vaporized in the initial blast as possible. Story 33. The building I am in has a fallout shelter, but my wife does not work here, so I do not know what I would do, to be honest. Story 34. I would not go or hide anywhere. I would try to say goodbye to all my friends and loved ones, and then I would just die. Story 35. I'm going to enjoy my last 20 minutes with my wife and dog, then accept my fate. You cannot get far enough away in 20 minutes from a nuclear blast to avoid long-term suffering from radiation. Story 36. If it is going to be that close, I am going to go stand on my roof and observe my little universe one last time. Story 37. If you are outside of the blast radius or far enough away to be protected by something, you still have about an hour before the fallout reaches you. Take iodine and drive upwind. This will definitely work and you will survive. Story 38. You cannot drive fast enough in 20 minutes to escape a nuclear blast. Even if you get far enough to survive it, you will wish you had not. Story 39. I would not bother moving. 20 minutes would not get me very far. I do not drive, and the buses come every 30 minutes. I would put myself in a funny position so when the vault dwellers find me, they can have a chuckle. Story 40. Local high school. It is old, and I know for a fact it has a Cold War bomb and fallout shelter in the auditorium. Story 41. Probably go and get underwater. I have it all around me, really close. I do not know that it is going to help, but it will still be nice to be in the water. Story 42. In our nuclear shelter in our cave, we Swiss really have that, and I stocked ours with non-perishable food, water, and a radio. Story 43. No hide. I am close enough to multiple major targets that I hope to be flash evaporated. When I was a kid in the early 1980s, they had a man who came by and said, by the time the light of the explosion hits your eye, before the nerve impulse travels down your retina to your brain, and your brain registers that it sees light, you will be evaporated. Then he showed us the shadows on the walls and steps in Hiroshima. He went on about the various zones, the fireball, the bombing of Dresden where the blast wave reversed, and the rising column of fire vacuumed up the air so forcefully that hurricane-force winds sucked people and objects into the center. He spoke of the blast wave, which, he said, is not what kills you. It is what is in the blast. Shredded lumber, bricks, nails, glass, all superheated like in a smelting furnace. After describing everyone who dies within the first few minutes in all sorts of horrific ways, he said, and those people are the lucky ones. He had only just started. Others covered the slow deaths. But yes, I am kind of glad I will be evaporated. One of the comforting things is when you burn alive, it kills the nerves in your skin quickly, and then you feel nothing. Story 44. Do I know ground zero? I am going 100 yards away from there. Instant vaporization, your brain might not even register the flash. Thank you. It is my third wish also. Story 45. Nowhere. I would stay right where I was and hope I was incinerated with the blast, like the nightmare scene in Terminator 2. Who would want to try to survive in a post-apocalyptic nuclear wasteland? Story 46. Outside, if there is nuclear war, what makes you think I want to be one of the last people alive on Earth? I cannot survive at all. Story 47. My roommate is a nurse, so I would put on some scrubs. A hospital is 800 feet from my home. I would go to the radiology clinic and don the lead aprons. Story 48. I could probably get to the highway in 10 minutes and from that point just accelerate. If I were 30 to 40 kilometers away from the first impact zone, I should be fine by continuing to drive. Driving toward it would result in a painless evaporation. Story 49. Okay, physics person here with actual knowledge. Distance is by far the best defense. Just hop in a car and drive at highway speeds for 18 or 19 minutes. Try to head upwind if you can, or at least crosswind, to avoid the radioactive fallout after the explosion. Even if you only make it 10 miles. From the blast site, you should be fine. Just find a good solid building when your time gets low. Brick or concrete is preferred. A basement or storm shelter would be best. The main thing to remember is to stay away from the windows until you hear the blast wave hit. This might take a minute or more. Afterwards, calmly walk back to your car and drive another couple of hours farther away. At that distance, the electricity will likely still be on, the stores will be open, and everyone will be watching their phones, watching the news to see what all the fuss is about. Story 50. It depends on how close to the epicenter I am. If I am on the outskirts, I will get in a car and drive as fast as I can away from where it is going to hit. If I am in the center, then there is no point. 20 minutes would not be enough time to get safely away from it. Story 51. The refrigerator. According to movies, which we all know are completely accurate, you can hide in a refrigerator. The door stays shut as you hurtle through the air at speed and plummet to the ground. Then the door opens easily, and you stagger out totally unscathed. Story 52. Everybody here is jumping immediately to all-out nuclear war. That is not the prompt. If I take the wording literally, as far as I know, it is just a nuclear blast. Then I would go to my old office, which is about 8 minutes away. It used to be owned by a military contractor and has a secure bunker underneath. We used it as storage. Story 53. The 7-Eleven is a 2-minute drive away. Grab a pack of cigarettes, which I haven't smoked in 15 years, and a 24-ounce beer and sit on my deck. I wish you had given us a little more time than 20 minutes. Oh, I would let my 14-year-old inside cat out for the first time in his life. Story 54. I work at a mine, so in 20 minutes, I could be hundreds of meters underground in an airtight steel shipping container. Story 55. Assuming it is going to hit where I am now, and not where I will be in 20 minutes, I am about 5 minutes from the interstate. I will get there as soon as possible and drive over 100 miles per hour until the storm hits. Then I will keep going anyway. If I can get on the highway in 5 minutes, driving for 15 minutes at 100 miles per hour will get me 25 miles away, which is relatively safe. Story 56. Head to the closest scenic overlook in my city with a bottle of scotch, a cigar, and listen to Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon for a little while. Story 57. I would go to where it is going to happen. If I am going to die in a nuclear explosion, I want it to be point blank, so fast that I do not even feel the heat. Story 58. I think the appropriate course of action is to hug your loved ones, tell them you love them, and that you are proud of them. There is nowhere you can hide in 20 minutes that will save you. Story 59. There is an unfinished nuclear bunker 15 minutes from here, but its entrance was sealed a few years ago. There should be a bunker in a closed factory 20 minutes from here, but I don't know which building or its condition. I know a factory that converted its bunker into a firing range, but it is about 50 minutes away. The park near me was built around a quarry, so it would offer some minimal protection. The museum near me is rumored to have secret protected rooms. It has some protected underground parking. Story 60. I would bike as far as I can, assuming roads will be gridlocked. 20 minutes is plenty of time to cover enough miles to escape the blast and fall out, assuming you have a good idea of where it will land. Story 61. I would rather get closer to the center of the explosion. There is not much to look forward to in the world after that. Story 62. The front porch. I am too close to an important military base to get far enough. I will just pull out the moonshine and enjoy the pretty lights before letting Samuel Colt ensure I do not die horribly. Story 63. Old farming operation near my place. Dad used to work there back in the day. There is said to be a fallout shelter beside one of their barns that was built during the Cold War. I am pretty sure the current owner's children do not even know about it. I would take the chance to drive over there and see if I could find it. Story 64. People need to do some research. If you are not at ground zero, you should go to a fallout shelter, subway station, or basement. Concrete structures below ground with no windows are preferable. 20 minutes is probably not enough time to dig a makeshift shelter, but there is a process for that. The first thing you have to worry about is shielding your eyes from the blinding flash and the pressure wave, then the firestorm. Fallout takes some time to fall out of the atmosphere, so if you can flee in the opposite direction of the prevailing wind, do so. If you are at ground zero, you will never know it because you are most likely vaporized. Story 65. In my bedroom with my girlfriend having a quick moment. For the last 10 minutes, I just went to my porch and drank my last cold coffee with her. Story 66. Stay inside and close all the windows. If you are far enough away, you will need to stay inside for at least 2 weeks. Story 67. How far away are we talking? I am beyond the blast radius of any target in town, even for a megaton hit. However, I will be absolutely obliterated by fallout. If the enemy forgets to retarget the decommissioned Titan II silo 3 miles from me, I will be obliterated by the blast wave no matter where I go, even by car, since the only way out is essentially a circle around that area. Story 68. Where could anyone go? 20 minutes? You essentially have to already be there, especially if it is public knowledge. The roads would be useless from people trying to go somewhere. If I had more time and could actually drive somewhere, we have some cave and underground storage facilities on the edge of the city. I do not know if that would actually work, but it is the best I have. Hopefully, the bomb would drop in the city and the whole system would not collapse. Story 69. I am close to downtown. There is nowhere for me to go unless I want to dive underwater and hope I am deep enough to make a difference. But it is not like I would actually see it coming. Story 70. There was a man who survived both the Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bombings, and nobody knows how he did. His name was Tsutomu Yamaguchi. He lived to be 93 years old. Story 71. The Backup Dispatch Center for Nassau County Police Department is an underground bunker built around the Cold War era. I have access as part of my job position. But what would I come back to? Nothingness for miles? No, I would rather be pulverized instantly by the bomb blast. Story 72. I would drive as close as possible to it so it would take me out first. No way would I want to live through that. Story 73. Depends on where the nuclear device is supposed to land. If it landed 20 minutes from now and I was the only one to know about it, and it landed in the most likely nearby target, I would simply drive home, which is in the opposite direction of where the nuclear device would be targeted. After 20 minutes, I should be well outside the distance of blast, radiation, and heat waves. Honestly, I am pretty sure even my workplace is outside of all of that. Then, after the blast, I would continue the last 20 minutes of my drive home. Story 74. In the London Underground, or in a swimming pool with as many self-contained underwater breathing apparatus tanks as I can lay my hands on, or in an underground car park or hotel basement, etc. Story 75. Yes, Miracle Mile is a great movie, but when I lived and worked on a nuclear missile base in Germany, we calculated 18 minutes. Story 76. I am fairly certain there is a bunker in the basement of the local town hall, which would likely be my best option. If too many people arrive, I will go to the top of a nearby hill with a nice view and enjoy the experience. Story 77. I wouldn't be hiding. I'd be in my car going 90 miles per hour in the opposite direction. If I knew exactly how long, at minute 19 I'd be hiding in a ditch. I could get out of the radius of the 5 pounds per square inch damage. The fallout afterwards would be the problem. At work, a 300 kiloton Minuteman III nuclear missile, according to NukeMap, would probably destroy my house. I'd collect my wife from her work, go to my aunt's, and hunker down if my car survived. I might survive, I might not, but I'd give it a try for my wife. Story 78. I would not. There is a point where the quality of life is no longer worth it, and I am sure being in the blast radius of a nuclear explosion ranks very high. Story 79. Where is the nuclear blast and how powerful is it? If I am at ground zero of a 50 megaton warhead, there is little to no point in running. Story 80. Depends on how close. If I knew it was going to be within the blast radius, I would not even hide. I would go grab some cigarettes, a lawn chair, and some whiskey, put on my shades and watch the show. Story 81. As far away from the center of the target as possible if known. Concrete building or underground. Ditch on the side of a freeway or behind a berm. Drainage pipes, sewers. Story 82. Sewers or a local pump station with underground capabilities can protect you from the initial blast. The aftermath and radiation are the main concerns. Story 83. That is a pretty grim thought. Where would your average adult get a school desk to hide under on short notice? Story 84. Geographically speaking, 20 minutes is long enough to save yourself certainly. However, a Mad Max world is not too bad after the first 20 years or so of starvation and radiation sickness. Story 85. Why would I waste 20 minutes trying to hide? I would go in my bunker if I had one. Depending on how I was feeling that day, I might welcome death. Otherwise, it seems pointless. I would spend the time with my wife or call her, something like that. Story 86. I live 10 minutes away from an old nuclear bunker that was meant for the president. It has been retrofitted and is not much of a bunker these days, but that sounds like a plan to me. My military intelligence liaison used to work there and knows people who could get us in. Story 87. Front lawn. Arms wide open. Let the light wash me free of the turmoil that this world is quickly becoming. Story 88. There was a man who survived both atomic bombings in Japan by being below ground. He just jumped into a drainage ditch. I would look for the lowest spot in the area and hope for the best. I do not think going into a sewer would be wise, as the blast damage would likely cause most underground water pipes to burst, creating a torrent of water that could cause drowning. Story 89. You have a reasonable chance to survive the first wave if you are 3 or more miles away from the blast radius. Then you have to avoid radioactive fallout for some time. Story 90. Depends. I would like to think I would sit outside with a nice whiskey and await my fate, but I think I would start panicking that the initial blast would not kill me instantly, and I would die in agony with my flesh stripped from my bones and blind. So I would probably get under cover the best I could and decide what to do depending on the devastation. That is, end my life on my terms. Story 91. We have a World War II air raid shelter in the basement still. I am a bit away from the city center, so I guess it is a decent chance to avoid the immediate blast. Story 92. I have already purchased a spot in the vault being built on the outskirts of my town. They are calling it Vault 4. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.